The orientation hall buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from 47 different species gathered for the infamous Kepler 438b survival course briefing. Commander Zex Thule of the Rigelian Defense Corps stood at the podium, his 6 eyes scanning the diverse crowd of military cadets, exploration specialists, and survival experts. "The statistics are clear," Zex Thule announced, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "Kepler 438b has claimed the lives of 90% of those who attempt the 14-day survival course. The planet's gravity is twice standard, the atmosphere is toxic to most species, and the wildlife—" He paused dramatically. "The wildlife makes the saurian death wasps of Proxima Centauri look like pet creatures." Nervous chittering and concerned growls rippled through the audience. Near the back, however, 2 humans sat remarkably calm. Alexander Chen, a terraforming engineer from Earth's Colonial Division, was methodically checking items in a worn canvas backpack. Beside him, Norah Williams, an exobiologist specializing in hostile environments, was reading what appeared to be a recreational novel. "The course begins at dawn tomorrow," Zex Thule continued. "You will be dropped at random coordinates across the planet's surface. Your mission: survive 14 days and reach the extraction point. No technology beyond basic survival gear is permitted." A Altarian warrior, her crystalline skin gleaming under the artificial lights, raised one of her 4 arms. "Commander, what constitutes basic survival gear?" "Standard military rations for 3 days, a basic shelter unit, water purification tablets sufficient for 1 week, and emergency medical supplies," Zex Thule replied. Alexander looked up from his packing. "Excuse me, sir. Are we restricted on the quantity of items or just the type?" The commander's primary eyes focused on the human. "Type only. Though I should warn you, Cadet Chen, that excess weight will be your enemy on Kepler 438b." Alexander nodded and returned to his packing, adding what looked suspiciously like a thermos and several wrapped packages to his already bulging backpack. The next morning, transport shuttles dispersed the candidates across Kepler 438b's hostile surface. Alexander found himself deposited in what the orbital scans had designated as a moderate threat zone, a distinction that seemed academic given the planet's overall lethality rating. The gravity hit him immediately, making each step feel like he was carrying another person on his shoulders. The reddish atmosphere stung his eyes despite his protective goggles, and the distant roar of some massive predator echoed across the alien landscape. Alexander surveyed his surroundings: jagged rock formations, patches of what might charitably be called vegetation, and in the distance, the ominous silhouette of creatures that definitely hadn't evolved for peaceful coexistence. Rather than immediately seeking shelter as protocol dictated, Alexander did something that would have horrified his instructors back on Earth. He sat down on a relatively flat boulder, opened his backpack, and pulled out a checkered blanket. "Well," he said to himself, spreading the blanket with practiced ease, "no point facing certain death on an empty stomach." From his pack emerged wonders that would have made any military survival expert weep. Actual sandwiches wrapped in wax paper, a thermos of hot coffee that somehow still steamed despite the hostile atmosphere, fresh fruit, and what appeared to be homemade cookies in a tin container. Alexander had barely taken his first bite of sandwich when a sound like grinding metal announced the arrival of one of Kepler 438b's infamous predators. The creature that emerged from behind a rock formation defied easy description. Imagine a cross between a rhinoceros, a food processor, and a very angry geological formation. The beast charged, its armored hide gleaming with natural weapons that evolution had spent millions of years perfecting for killing. Alexander calmly reached into his pack, withdrew a small device, and pressed a button. The charging monster suddenly stopped, sniffed the air, and approached the picnic blanket with what could only be described as curiosity rather than homicidal intent. "Pheromone modulator," Alexander explained to no one in particular, offering the creature what appeared to be a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Amazing what you can accomplish when you actually read the xenobiology reports instead of just the threat assessments. 3 days into the course, Norah Williams encountered Alexander's impromptu campsite. She found him sitting comfortably beside a small but efficient shelter, reading a book while something that looked like a cross between a grizzly bear and a pile of angry rocks lay peacefully nearby, occasionally accepting treats from Alexander's seemingly bottomless supply of snacks. "Alexander?" Norah called out, recognizing her fellow human despite the protective gear. Norah, perfect timing. I was just about to break out the good coffee. He gestured to his companion. Meet Rocky here. Turns out these lithophagic predators are actually quite reasonable once you establish that you're not trying to compete for their mineral deposits. Norah stared at the creature, then at Alexander's elaborate campsite, complete with what appeared to be a small garden plot. How exactly did you manage all this? Alexander shrugged, pouring coffee from his thermos into a spare cup. Same way humans manage most things, really. I read the manual, brought appropriate supplies, and remembered that survival isn't about fighting your environment. It's about understanding it. He pulled out a tablet displaying detailed ecological charts. See, everyone else focused on the predators and the toxins. But the real key to Kepler 438b is the symbiotic relationships. The atmospheric toxins are actually produced by the plant life as a defense mechanism, but they're neutralized by compounds secreted by the soil bacteria. The predators are territorial, but they're also highly social within their territories. And the gravity, Alexander gestured to a series of pulleys and levers he'd constructed around his campsite. Basic mechanical advantage. Humans figured out how to move heavy objects with simple machines about 10,000 years ago. By the end of the 14-day course, Alexander and Norah had not only survived, but had established what could generously be called a small settlement. Their extraction point arrival was witnessed by Commander Zexthal himself, who watched in disbelief as two humans emerged from the wilderness accompanied by a small parade of previously murderous alien creatures, all looking remarkably well-fed and content. How? Was all the commander managed to say. Alexander hefted his still heavy backpack and grinned. Turns out the secret to surviving a Deathworld isn't about being the toughest or the strongest. It's about being adaptable, prepared, and remembering that even on the deadliest planet in the galaxy, lunch is still the most important meal of the day. As they boarded the extraction shuttle, Norah couldn't help but notice that Alexander was already packing for their next assignment. What's that? She asked, pointing to a new addition to his gear. Tea set, Alexander replied matter-of-factly. I hear our next deployment is to an ice world. Nothing beats a good cup of tea when you're trying to make friends with hostile snow leopards. The shuttle lifted off, leaving behind a small group of alien predators who watched their human friends depart with what their species had never before experienced. Genuine sadness at saying goodbye. In the official after-action report, Commander Zexthal would write, recommend immediate revision of survival course protocols. Also recommend consulting with human specialists before designating any future worlds as unsurvivable. Apparently, they consider such classifications more of a suggestion than a warning.